Michael Oren. Michael, thanks so much for being with us today.
Good to be with you, shows.
First off, what does the meeting between Netanyahu and Trump signal next week? We know that the topics that we're hearing about right now, they might be discussing, of course, is the deal, a possible deal in Gaza, and Iran that's on the table. But what does this signal to us?
Well, first of all, it's a big table. The big issue now is what will happen if Iran tries to rebuild some of the nuclear facilities that were either obliterated, according to the president, or severely damaged, according to other sources. What will constitute a violation of the ceasefire in America's eyes? And if so, what is America willing to do, or what is America willing to let Israel do in response? To me, in many ways, that's the sort of the key issue here. Does Iran remain sort of out of the picture, or will Iran be able to reconstitute itself and rearm its proxies in the region? That's regarding Iran. Regarding Gaza specifically, what's on the table is the nature of the ceasefire. Now, Israel is willing to agree to a ceasefire in return for a certain number of hostages, but Israel wants to retain the right to renew fighting after the ceasefire expires. Now, that's a condition that Hamas adamantly rejects. Hamas wants the end of the war so it basically can win the war and come out of the tunnels and declare victory and begin to reconstitute its power in Gaza. So there's kind of almost a symmetry between the situation in Iran and the situation in Gaza, albeit at much bigger dimensions in Iran. But the question is, to what degree is the United States willing to stand behind Israel and its current government, because not everyone agrees with the position of the government, certainly about Gaza, in ensuring that Israel will have the ability to act if a ceasefire is violated and if the regime in Iran or Hamas in Gaza moves to rearm and reorganize.
Now, specifically back to the sticking points of this deal, you mentioned Israel wanting to go back in after, a temporary ceasefire happens. But this is something that's been going on now for months and months of being negotiated. How can there actually be a ceasefire? What will it take for a ceasefire to actually happen at this point in time? These are points that continue to be negotiated, and nothing has succeeded at this point in time.
Well, there are people in this country, and that could be a majority according to some polls, and significant members of the coalition even have said, okay, it's enough and enough. Let's just have an open-ended ceasefire and get all the hostages back. Give Hamas what it wants. Let Hamas come out of the tunnels and try to deal with the mess that's Gaza. And should they ever attack us again, even with a single rocket, we'll go back in and destroy them and have the Americans guarantee our ability to do that. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been very reluctant to agree to such a condition. He remembers Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000, when then Prime Minister Ehud Barak said, well, if Hezbollah violates the ceasefire, we can go back in. Netanyahu remembers Israel's withdrawal from Gaza in 2005, when Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said, well, if Hamas violates the ceasefire, we can go back in. Once you're getting out, it's not so easy to go back in. That's the lesson of history. So now we'll try to convince the president in Washington to stand by him as he says, okay, the only agreement that Israel can truly accept will be one that will enable Israel at the end of the ceasefire, should it choose to renew the fighting.
Right. I mean, once Netanyahu and Trump meet, would it be possible for immediate change to come out of this type of meeting? What realistically will happen here?
Well, my sources in Washington are telling me some very fantastic things, that President Trump has not abandoned his idea of creating a resort-type area in Gaza. And as Israel has been gaining control over 75% of the Strip, moving the Palestinian population southward, it could easily be interpreted as a precursor to the realization of President Trump's vision of this, this Riviera on the Mediterranean. So you can't rule that out either. There are many options here. And I think it's clear, though, that the Prime Minister and the President want to see an end to the fighting in Gaza. And keep in mind, it's not just the Palestinians are suffering, Israelis are suffering. We've lost 20 soldiers this month alone fighting in Gaza. And increasingly, Israelis are uncertain, unclear, what are these soldiers dying for?
Right. What can President Trump's influence be on a ceasefire? You just mentioned what your sources are telling you about, his plan to continue to turn Gaza into a Riviera at some point. But ultimately, how do you get Hamas out of the Gaza Strip? It seems as if they continue to recruit people inside parts in specific parts of the Gaza Strip.
Well, they're recruiting thousands, but most of them are young people, and they can't really be trained. So they don't constitute the same type of military threat I remember I mentioned the asymmetry between Iran and Gaza, but there's a broader symmetry, and that is Israel has won a partial military victory in Gaza. It has won a partial military victory in Lebanon against Hezbollah and a partial military victory against Iran. We haven't defeated Hamas entirely, we haven't defeated Hezbollah entirely, and we haven't defeated Iran entirely militarily. But what we have won in Gaza, and certainly in Lebanon, is a strategic victory that neither Hamas nor Hezbollah no longer threaten us the way they did before the war. And it's led to be seen whether, Iran will go back to pose a strategic threat against the state of Israel, and whether Hamas will go back to pose a strategic threat to the state of Israel. That's really what's on the table here, shows how do we move forward and build on these military victories, which, although partial, can lead to a strategic triumph, which will change the entire Middle East. We can have peace with Syria, peace with Lebanon, peace with other countries in the region, but only provided that Iran and its proxies cannot regroup and rearm.
Let's talk about Iran just very, very fast. Could military operations continue inside of the Islamic Republic?
Yes, because I'm unconvinced that the Iranian public is going to desist and just sort of accept its fate. Iranian leaders may view this war very differently. They could think that, well, we've held out against the world's biggest military power. We caused extensive damage to Israel. We learned Israel's weak point, which is civilian casualties. We have a president of the United States who bombed nuclear facilities, but when we shot rockets back at Qatar, the United States immediately sued for a ceasefire and pressured Israel to accept that ceasefire. They could do this very differently, and if I were a betting man, I would say that they're going to try to test this ceasefire. They're going to try to see whether we're going to try building one of the nuclear facilities or rearming the ballistic missile arsenals or the restoring the launchers, and see whether the United States will react and whether the United States will let Israel react.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Michael. Oren, thank you for your perspective as always here.
Thank you, Susan.